The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be sharing my time with the member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay. As always, it's a great honour to stand here as the representative of the people of Timmins James Bay on this day that the old Irish Catholics would tell us is St. Bridget Day. And why is St. Bridget Day worth recognizing is that this is the day that's halfway between the darkest day of the year and the spring solstice. And I'd like to think that we are past the dark days, but I don't think we are, Madam Speaker. January was a very hard month, and we are looking at a time in our nation where there are many forces of darkness confronting us. Forces of disinformation, a breakdown in civil society, a breakdown in our ability to talk to one another. And so it is essential that Parliament is open. The People's House, the House of Commons, the House of the common people, to come here and debate. There's so much that we need to address at this time. Today marks not just the halfway point in the solstice, today marks 27 years that the people of Neskantaga First Nation have gone without clean water. 27 years. Generations have grown up with contaminated water in a community in Canada. And just over from Neskantaga at Martin Falls First Nation, the community marks the 111th day that the children of Martin Falls have been unable to go to school because of the chronic underfunding, because of the poverty and the overcrowding in Martin Falls and Neskantaga. This is the issue that we should be debating. That we have a society in Canada where Indigenous people are expected to live in such degrading circumstances. And the thing that, Madam Speaker, is fascinating about Neskantaga and Martin Falls is that they're in a place that many Canadians have heard of, the Ring of Fire. You hear about the great riches of the Ring of Fire. Doug Ford said he was going to drive a bulldozer to the Ring of Fire. That the nation of Canada's focus has always been on let's get the resources out of the ground, and yet we have children who can't go to school because of the chronic underfunding. And it was very moving throughout January with the slowdown and the crisis with Omicron to hear parents talk about the mental health of their children. The mental health of children in cities and suburbs and small town, and how we had to be there for our children. We never heard any national conversation about the mental health of the children in a community like Martin Falls who are denied what is a universal human right, the right to quality education. They're being denied that. So no, I don't think we are halfway between the darkness and the light. We're still very much in the darkness. I think, Madam Speaker, of January and the 1,000 people who died from Omicron in Ontario alone. 1,000 people so far. I think of their families. I think of the frontline medical and health teams that struggle on these shifts to try and keep people alive. I think of the people who are facing delayed surgeries because our ICU units are overrun. And today, this morning, in North Bay, in Northern Ontario, there's a gang of thugs outside the health unit in North Bay, threatening people. What kind of nation have we become when the notion of freedom is that you can go and target vaccine clinics like they bragged this weekend that they were shutting down vaccination clinics in Ottawa? What kind of so-called freedom is it to target doctors and nurses and health workers? I know we're tired. Omicron hit us like a baseball bat. We all thought we'd gotten through it. We thought we got through it while making sure that we didn't bother to ensure that the rest of the world had access to vaccines. And then what came out of the rest of the world was Omicron, and we don't know what's coming next. But, Madam Speaker, what concerns me most is not so much that we're tired, not so much that we're stressed, but this fundamental breakdown as a nation that we have to confront. Because when I talk to people about the pandemic, I know that vast majority are tired, they're doing their part, they're going along. But when I see people dancing and desecrating the tomb of the unknown soldier, Never, never, never in my life as a Canadian could I have imagined that someone would be so ignorant. But what concerns me much more is the amount of people who came on my Facebook page to say, it never happened. It's not true. You're making this up. The disinformation about the situation that we're facing is the real crisis in this country. Because we're not talking about here in Parliament how we find our way through a pandemic. We're talking about whether or not we can work together as parliamentarians to try and rise our nation up, to find a way through this together. Or some may decide that it's politically advantageous. You know, there's one very crafty Conservative MP who's come up with this term called the vaccine vendetta. Now, I actually probably think it's more of a vendetta against his own leader. But what happened in our country that vaccinations, a solution, medical science, our frontline researchers became the target, that Conservatives could talk about vaccination as a vendetta? You know, Madam Speaker, and of course, they're all wrapping themselves in the Canadian flag and walking around with the flag upside down and walking around with the flag desecrated with the swastika. And everyone I've ever heard from this so-called freedom group tells me, oh, well, my great-grandfather or my uncle or my grandfather fought in the war. Yeah, welcome to Canada. Everybody's relatives fought in the war. But they fought for a freedom that is not an individual right to harass and intimidate. They fought for a collective belief that together as a nation we are different and we are better. And rather than talk about our veteran grandfathers, I'm going to talk about my grandmother, Lola Jane Lindsay McNeil from the Ottawa Valley, who worked 12-hour shifts as a nurse. Oh, my grandmother was a hard woman with me because she remembered polio. Polio disappeared just before I was born. I thought my grandmother was raging and angry. She had been on the wards of the polio children. She understood the importance of vaccinations. So when someone comes on my page and says, oh, the polio vaccine, all they needed was vitamin C. No, that's false. We have to call that out. I urge my colleagues from all parties that we have to rise above this disinformation campaign that's out there, that this is somehow a vendetta. This is somehow cooked up by the Prime Minister to make everybody's life hard. Yeah, it's hard. Suck it up. Grow up. It's been hard for all of us. But it's been really hard for our frontline medical workers who deserve better than to see a mob standing trying to harass them at health units today. And you know, Madam Speaker, it brings me back to this principle of so-called liberty and freedom. I welcome the protesters on Parliament Hill. That's why Parliament is here. I love the fact that an open Parliament Hill is a place where people can demonstrate for whatever reason they want. And if the City of Ottawa decides that Wellington Street is now going to be part of a permanent demonstration, I don't have a problem with that. I just hope that they will allow that for when Indigenous protesters come. But what I do have a problem with is the harassment of small businesses on our residential streets, the harassment of people off Parliament Hill. That's not about freedom. That's about intimidation. And we're better than that as Canadians. We are so much better than that. But it means in Parliament we have to stand up. And you know, Madam Speaker, I'm going to close. I've been reading Camus again and again and again. Because when I'm hearing people talk about my right to do this and my right to do that, Camus says that what happens in the plague is that there's no more individual destiny. There is only a collective destiny made up of the plague and the emotions shared by us all. So yeah, we're frustrated. Yeah, we're angry. Yeah, Omicron has caused massive emotional damage to all of us. But we can't exploit that. We have to find a way as parliamentarians. And I know there are people of goodwill in every part of this chamber who understand that as a nation, as Canada, we have to be that light to say there's a better way to be. That's the discussion that I'm hoping we can have with respect and support and the love for our people who've suffered so much through this pandemic. Thank you, Madam Speaker.